guys, it's Ty and welcome back to my channel. So today, all of the books that I'm going to be talking about are new releases for 2022, and a majority of these books are actually books that I have been anticipating for this year, and I have a couple of hits, I have a couple of misses. One of these books I actually had to DNF, unfortunately. So I will start with my lowest rated book and work my way all the way up to my highest rated book. So we will go ahead and get started. So the book that I'm going to start off with is How High We Go in the Dark by Sequoia Nagamatsu. And unfortunately, this is the book that I had to DNF. And this is supposed to be a adult science fiction fantasy dystopia novel that takes place, I believe, in like the year 2030. And it's supposed to be about a plague that has taken over Earth. And this one just really did not work well for me. And I think the biggest problem that I had with this is that I just had the wrong expectations going into this, and the biggest wrong expectation I had was that I did not realize that this was supposed to be like a short story collection. I thought that this obviously was going to be like one cohesive story, and the short stories that I got through, I think I got through like 3 or 4 of them. I just wasn't connecting with any of them, and I thought they were kind of like strange, or I just didn't really understand what was going on in them, or like the point of them, or maybe all of that gets explained later on. I just couldn't get into it. And so it was really disappointing for me, because this book is supposed to deal with like viruses and plagues, and those are usually buzzwords for me and what draws me into books like this. This is why it was one of my most anticipated reads for 2022. So I was really disappointed when I had to put this one down, but I just could not make myself push through it. And when I get to the point where I put down a book and I have no desire to want to pick it back up, that's when I know that I'm probably just gonna have to put it down for good, because that's exactly what happened with this one. And to give you guys kind of like an example of one of the stories that I'm talking about, there was like a story in here about like, I believe he was like a doctor, and he was working with like these pigs, and I think they were like harvesting the pigs, and they were trying to use the pigs in organs so that they could put those into humans to try to keep the people who had the virus alive, obviously. And so one of the pigs could actually talk, and the pig's name was Notorious Pig. And like the doctor could talk to this pig, and the pig, to me, I don't believe he was like saying anything like of significance, but they never explained why it was that this one particular pig could talk. And even me just like explaining this out loud, it sounds crazy to me, but I just don't understand like the meaning of this story. And it was really short. Obviously the book isn't that long, so none of these stories are extremely long, but it wasn't explained like why this pig could talk, why it was that this one pig could talk, and like what was the meaning behind this. So I could not get into it. Now, with that being said, it could be that this was explained later on, and maybe had I stuck with it, I could get all the explanation that I'm needing, but I could not make myself do it. I could tell just by the few stories that I could get through that I think these are probably supposed to be like all connected, because like a couple of the characters in some of these stories were mentioned or brought up in like the next story. So I do think they're probably supposed to be connected. But like I said, I just cannot get into it. A lot of the people that I have seen review this have actually loved it and have said nothing but good things about it. But for whatever reason, this just was not connecting with me. So if you are going to pick this up, just go into it knowing that it is going to be a short story collection. For whatever reason, I totally spaced on that. I missed it. I didn't pick that up from this synopsis, but this should not work for me, and I had to DNF this one. Then the next one that I picked up was Lucy Foley's The Paris Apartment, and this was another one that was on my most anticipated reads for 2022. And this is a adult mystery novel, and this follows our main character by the name of Jess. And in this story, she is basically like running away from her life, and she contacts her half-brother Ben, and she lets him know that she needs a place to stay. He says that it's fine, she can come out and stay with him. When she gets to the apartment, she lets herself in and realizes that Ben's not there. When she wakes up the next day and realizes that he's still not there, she kind of figures out that something's not right, and she takes it upon herself to try and figure out what happened to her brother. And she also notices that in the apartment building that all of his neighbors are kind of weird, and she starts to suspect that they all might have something to do with her brother Ben's disappearance. And so the story kind of takes off from there. This is actually another disappointment for me because I ended up rating this one a 2 stars. I won't go into too much detail about my feelings here because I did do a review already and have that posted on my channel. I read this one along with Lucy Foley's other book, The Guest List, and I kind of compared them two a little bit and told you guys which one I thought was better. So I will leave that video linked down in my description bar if you guys want to check that one out. But like I said, I gave this one a 2 stars. First off, it was really hard for me to get into this one. I think it was like 100 pages before, in my opinion, something even happened. I actually almost DNF'd this one. Could have been a second DNF, but once things started to pick up, I do think the characters were, in the beginning, someone interesting. I think once we started to get a little bit of background about them and kind of like their connections to Ben, the book started to get a little bit more interesting. But then with that being said, I also kind of think that was also a downfall because some of the things that was being explained about the characters kind of started to be unbelievable because it seemed like everybody was so infatuated with Ben, and I was like, this dude can't be that great. I just don't believe it. And so this just did not sit well with me. Again, I have a lot more thoughts down in that video if you guys want to check that one out. Yeah, I don't really have much more to say about this. Then next up, we have Reckless Girls by Rachel Hawkins, and this is another adult mystery book. And so this has a really basic premise where we have 6 strangers that are trapped on a deserted island. This is one of those other books where I feel like this isn't what I expected, nor is it what I wanted this to be. Going into this, I thought that this was going to be 6 people that were going to be trapped on this island and they were going to be literally fighting to survive. No, this is not what this is. So if you are going to go into this one, just know what you are going to get. So these people are trapped on this island, and I listened to this on an audiobook, and I know for a fact that it was about 60% before anything actually happened. And what really frustrated me about this book was that throughout this book, we are getting like little snippets of people's like past experience on this island that they are stuck on. So people have been talking about how there was like cannibalism on this island. They're talking about like poisonous fish and like these sharks, and how people who have stayed on this island before, how they were like hearing like voices and like just explaining like their terrible experiences on this island. Meanwhile, you have these 6 people that are on this island basically living it up. They are out here partying, drinking, eating all this food. They are swimming every day, tanning every day, living their best lives on this island for about 60% of this book. 60% before anything actually happens. And I'm just like, what the heck? And so we do actually get some background on all of the characters. So also throughout this book, we are getting like these chapters. So it's told in like a now and then timeline from each set of characters, and it's told between like in like 2s. So like everyone kind of came in like couples. So you have 2 couples that are on the island, and then a set of friends. And so you kind of get this background, you get background on each set of people and what actually brought them to the island. And so then at a certain point in this story, it is revealed on why all of them are actually there. And so it's just really a bunch of drama and like rich people problems is how I'm going to explain this. I actually ended up giving this a 3 stars. As much as negative as it sounds like I'm being about this, once it started to pick up at 60%, and things were starting to be revealed, some of the reveals were actually okay, and I was like, okay, I'm here for that. There was like a point in here where there was like some relationship drama that I was actually into, because listen, I'm here for relationship drama. Even though that's not what I was here for, I'm here for a relationship drama, if you know what I mean. So that was actually entertaining. But I still wanted like people to be fighting for their lives. I thought I was going to get cannibalism. I thought I was going to get people trying to eat each other. I thought I was going to get people attacked by sharks. I thought I was literally going to get people trying to survive on this island, not people living their best life. Like, that's not what I thought I was going to get. So if you are going into this book thinking that you are going to get people literally trying to survive on an island, that's not what you're going to get here. What you're going to get here is these people just living it up on this island, which even stuck on an island isn't the right thing to say, because their boats are there. They literally can leave at any time that they wanted to. So I don't even know why stuck on an island is part of this story, now that I'm thinking about it. But anywho, I ended up giving this a 3 stars. It was fine. It was okay. Not the best thing that I read, not the worst thing that I read. Once things started to pick up and a bit of the reveals about some of the couples on this island, they were fine. But I just wouldn't go into this with too many expectations, because I can almost promise you whatever you think this is about, it's not about that. And then the next book that I have here is The Maid by Nita Prose. And this is another adult mystery. And I think this is like classified as like a cozy mystery, which I've never read like a cozy mystery before. But this is supposed to follow our main character by the name of Molly. She's like Molly the maid. And she works at this like really upscale hotel. And so one day while she is working and cleaning out these people's hotel, I believe their name was like Mr. Black. When she goes back into the room, she finds out that he is actually dead, and she gets blamed for the murder. And so throughout this book, I want to say that it takes place over the course of a week, I believe. She is blamed for the murder and trying to clear her name of murdering the guest, Mr. Black. And so I ended up giving this story a 3 stars. I enjoyed it for the most part. I really enjoyed getting the story from Molly's perspective. She, I think, is suspected of maybe having autism based off of her characteristics. She's not somebody who can really pick up on like social cues. She's really like awkward. She like makes jokes at the inappropriate times. She's always questioning whether or not people are like laughing at her or whether or not people are laughing with her. And so I just really enjoyed reading this book from her perspective, and I liked getting the backstories of not only Molly but about some of the characters in this book. And I think what brought my rating down, because even though I really liked reading from Molly, I think towards the end of this story, I didn't really care for how it ended, basically. And the big reveal, I just think some of the things that happened in this wasn't really explained all that well, and like the really big reveal to me really didn't make sense, and how it was revealed, I just feel like it was so glossed over. And I kind of feel like that throughout the book. I feel like some things were explained too much, and other things that should have been explained more were not. And I didn't really like that, and I just didn't really like how the end of it overall was just very predictable. And I just wish that we got kind of like a different ending, because there was at one point where I thought it was gonna go, and maybe this is just where I wish it would have went. I just think there was just a handful of things that I really liked and then a handful of things that I didn't like, where it just kind of like landed right in the middle for me. And I think I heard somebody else talking about this, and this was supposed to be, or it's getting made into like a movie or some sort of like TV show or something. So if it is, I'm really looking forward to this because I'm interested to see how they would put all of this together. So but overall, I enjoyed this for what it was. It was entertaining while I was reading it. And then the next one that I have is Don't Cry for Me by Daniel Black. And this is a adult historical fiction. And this is what I would describe as a father's apology letter to his son. So this is about our main character, Jacob, who is writing a letter to his son, Isaac. And in the beginning, we find out that Jacob is in his 60s and he is dying of cancer. And we learn that Jacob had a really hard time over the years accepting the fact that his son Isaac was gay. And so Jacob has taken the time to write this letter to his son Isaac, basically explaining his actions and how he felt, and kind of describing what he wished that his relationship was like with Isaac over the years, and kind of describing what his upbringing was like, telling Isaac all the things that he wished that he could have said to him face to face. And this was really emotional, and you can really feel how remorseful Jacob is throughout this book. You can really see all of the pain he felt and how he wished that maybe he could have done things differently when it came to Isaac. Not only is it talking about how it was hard for him to accept Isaac's sexuality, but we also get to see his relationship with Isaac's mother, Rachel, and how that had deteriorated over the years. We saw how he grew up living with his grandparents, and then we ended up learning why Jacob grew up with his grandparents. This book touches on so much. It touches on things that Jacob was involved in, such as bullying when he was younger, and how there were a couple of people that he mentioned in his letter to Isaac that he bullied or participated in bullying in with other groups of children. There was a discussion on like double standards and how it was okay for men to do this but not women. There was discussions on how he would be at work having these discussions with some of his coworkers, and how people needed to take the time to learn about their history, which is so true. You know, to this day, a lot of us don't know like truly where we came from and truly like our backstories, and how people really need to take the time out to learn about our history. And so that came up in this book, which I thought was really interesting. And so this little thing touched on so much, and I was so surprised. And so overall, this is just supposed to be like one continuous letter, but it's told over, it's as if he was writing it on different days. So it started with him writing it on November 12th, and then I think he stopped like sometime in like February. And so I ended up rating this a 4 stars. The only things that I really wished was that we got some sort of response from Isaac, because we never got a chance to see how Isaac responded to his father. And it would just be nice to know like where that relationship stood, if it was ever repaired. Like, we just never got a conclusion of how this relationship ended, if it ended, if it resolved itself, like what happened. And I also had a little part in here that just didn't sit well with me, and it could just be like a me thing. But there was like a small part in here where Jacob was kind of telling Isaac how, yeah, even though I treated you like this and I've done all this stuff to you because I, wasn't accepting of your sexuality, but just remember to tell people all the good things that I've done. Make sure you remind them. And I'm just, in my mind, I'm just like, you can't tell other people what to point out about you because that might not be important to them. And maybe that's just me, maybe that's just the petty side of me, but I'm just like, you can't do that, because even though you might see that as important to you, your son might not see that as important to him. So I didn't like that. It was still kind of like Jacob was still wanting that extra pat on the back for, the few good things. Like he wanted those few good things to erase all of all of the bad things that you did. And I didn't really like that. But overall, I did give this a 4 stars. I would definitely recommend this to people. I never heard of this author, Daniel Black. This was one of my book of the month picks that I picked on a whim. And it seems like these books that I just pick on a whim from book of the month that I've never heard of, these authors that I've never heard of, these titles that I've never heard of, I always end up liking them. And maybe I need to start picking more of these because they seem to be a win for me. So I really enjoyed this. So these last 2 books that I have are actually 2 books that were on my most anticipated reads. So this next one is The Book of Cold Cases by Simone St. James, and this was a adult mystery thriller book. So this follows our main character, Shay, who is a true crime blogger. And one day while she was at work, she notices that a woman that walks in by the name of Beth is actually the same Beth who was convicted of a murder back in 1977. And Beth in 1977 was dubbed as the Lady Killer. And she actually catches up with Beth and asks if she can interview her. And so Beth decides to partake in this interview, and the story kind of takes off from there. They end up meeting, and the story is then kind of told in like a dual timeline from the past and the present, where we learn what actually took place back in 1977 with Beth and how she ended up getting the name as the Lady Killer and what happened in that case. And then we are shown in the present with Shay trying to solve this case. And I really enjoyed this book. I ended up giving this one a 4 stars. This is my first book from Simone St. James, and I had a fun time with this one. I enjoyed the dual timeline. I really enjoyed the characters. I actually liked Beth more so than our character Shay. I liked Beth just because I liked how she was depicted in the story and how she was like this high class, beautiful, wealthy young girl that is convicted of these like gruesome murders. I did also like Shay and how she was like this really closed off, quiet woman that secretly loves like true crime, and how she is like obsessed with trying to solve this case. And I just love the true crime feel of this, especially as someone who myself likes true crime. Not that I'm obsessed with it or anything, but I just like the true crime feel of this book. And I did like the horror element of this story, so I was not expecting that. So I was a little bit surprised when we got that in here. And then I liked the dual timeline where we got this told from the past and the present. I have her other books, so I don't think this is new for this author where she does that, where she is telling the story from the past and the present. But I like stories like that, and I like when stories can do that in a way that I'm interested in both timelines. I feel like in a lot of books, when authors try to do that, I find myself interested in one timeline over the other. So I really like it when an author can do it and I'm interested in both of the timelines. So I really enjoyed that. And I really enjoyed the reveal in this. I do kind of feel like the reveal was a tad bit early in this story. It was kind of like it was revealed early, and then we got like, here's the reveal, and so now we're gonna give you the explanations on why for like the rest of the book, instead of the book being here's the reveal at the end, if that makes sense. So I do think that was just a little bit strange, but overall I really did enjoy this. This was, like I said, one of my most anticipated reads. Finally, I got one that just did not disappoint, so I was really happy about that. And then my last book that I have is Gallant, not sure how to pronounce that, by V.E. Schwab. And this is a young adult fantasy horror gothic novel. So this one follows our main character by the name of Olivia Pryor. And at the very beginning of the story, we learn that she is an orphan and she's mute and she uses sign language to communicate. She lives in this orphanage, and the only thing that she has of her parents is her mother's journal. And in the journal, her mother has left her a entry that tells her that she needs to stay away from Gallant. She receives this letter one day from an uncle that she didn't realize that she had, and it says that she has been invited to go to Gallant to stay. And this actually comes at a really good time because she is actually too old to be staying at this orphanage any longer. So she gets to this house and some weird things start to happen. I really enjoyed this. I really enjoyed the format of this book. It is told a lot in her mother's journal entries, and there are illustrations in this book. Oh, I just happened to turn to one. So there are a lot of illustrations. There's a lot of short passages like this. It really made for a fast reading experience. This really reminded me of the story Mexican Gothic. It kind of was like a young adult version of that. That is like the best way for me to describe that, I feel like. I'm not sure how many people would agree with me, but that, like, while I was reading this, that was the book that I was thinking about the entire time. And I just liked just the overall vibe of this, and just like the creepiness. And I liked Olivia as a character. I liked the people that were staying in the house with her. I like the explanation of why the house was the way that it was, and why her family wanted her to stay away, and why her mother had left that passage for her. I just like the explanation and how easy it was to understand, because that was my one complaint when I was reading Mexican Gothic. I kind of felt like in that story, the whole explanation of why everything was happening was so convoluted, but in this one, it was just so easy to understand and everything kind of made sense. And it could be because this is supposed to be like more young adult and it's supposed to be easier to understand. Maybe that's why I kind of like this one so much. But I don't know. I just think just the vibe of this one, I just really liked. And I just liked the overall story. I liked Olivia as a character and how the only thing that she wanted was just like a sense of family. And I liked the way this one ended and how it wasn't just perfect. It wasn't just like this overall perfect wrapped up in a bow. So I really enjoyed this one. I don't read a lot of V.E. Schwab books. I think I've just read like her Vicious series and this. So I really enjoyed this one. I would highly recommend this one. And this is like one of those ones I would like read in the fall. This might be like a reread for me in the fall, because I just would need like the vibe in that fall setting. So I really enjoyed this one. I gave it 5 stars and I would highly recommend. So that is all that I have for you guys, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.